Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
The new Premier League season is well and truly underway, as Arsenal opened up with a 2-0 win over Crystal Palace, thanks to a Marc Guéhi own goal, as well as a goal from Gabriel Martinelli. The XG did indicate that this was a closer match than the scoreline suggests, 1.44 to 1.21. But Arteta has a new look team that promises much for the season, so what tactics did he use in and out of possession? In this video we'll take a look. And for the lineups, as you can see on the OneFootball app, Palace lined up in what was a flexible 4-2-3-1, whilst Arsenal on the other hand used a 4-3-3 that we've seen plenty of in pre-season, with Ben White at right back and Xhaka and Odegaard either side of Partey. If you want to get lineups like this, stats and so much more, check out OneFootball for absolutely free through the link in the description below. They've been supporting the channel for a while and they are the best free football app on the market, so check them out down below. We'll begin by looking at Arsenal in possession. Crystal Palace could line up in a very narrow 4-3-3 with Ayew and Eze being interchangeable. The general idea was to have these front six occupy the central space, making it extremely difficult for Arsenal to progress through the centre. But Palace were also flexible. At times during the match, we saw this become more of a front two, with Eze looking to pick up Thomas Partey, as he was often the deepest solo pivot, so by picking him up, it would be even more difficult for Arsenal to play through the centre. And the obvious outlets for Arsenal in these situations would be White and Zinchenko. However, Schlupp and Ayew, or Eze if he was deeper, would be the active men, so when the ball did go wide, they had the responsibility of quickly shifting to the fullback, whilst the rest of the midfield shifted across as well. Again, the idea was to limit how easily Arsenal could play forward, as now when the wide men applied pressure, it could mean that Arsenal will force long or into riskier passes. As discussed, Palace want to make it difficult to play through the centre, and at the moment, Partey is the solo pivot for Arsenal. And the pressing shape was quite variable, so initially here we can see a front three, as well as the midfield three, making it extremely difficult to play through this central position. As the ball runs on, the shape can adapt slightly, becoming more of a 1 and a 2, to ensure that a man was still covering Partey in these situations, but at the same time, the two forwards can apply pressure onto the centre-backs. And the obvious space is with Zinchenko, but as soon as it does begin to go wide, Ayew from his more central midfield position can then apply pressure, hoping to force Zinchenko long or backwards towards Ramsdale. To go around this, the success for Arsenal could come when Ramsdale had the ball, as the space was still outside with the fullbacks, and if Ramsdale was quick in his passing, he could find a man before Crystal Palace had a chance to move a man across to apply the pressure. So again, we still see that similar pressing shape, with Crystal Palace having a 1 and then 2 forwards looking to apply pressure to the centre-backs. So in these scenarios, Ramsdale can be the extra man deep. So crucially, Zaha still finds himself drawn towards the centre-back, meaning that the fullback is free for Arsenal. So if Ramsdale was quick with his passing, he could then locate the fullback in space. But in the build-up, Arsenal could take up many different positions, a lot of this facilitated by new signing Zinchenko. They could line up in a more traditional 4-3-3, with Thomas Partey being the single pivot, whilst Xhaka and Odegaard pushed up fairly high, forcing the Crystal Palace midfield slightly deeper. In these situations, as we spoke about, Palace were defending fairly narrow through the centre, so the obvious pass was often to Zinchenko, who from deep is an excellent creative passer, looking to find men inside, whether this be Xhaka or Jesus, who was often dropping into the spaces. So Arsenal could at times build up with this fairly traditional shape of a back four, as well as a midfield three consisting of 2 free 8s in Xhaka and Odegaard, whilst Partey would be the anchoring man deeper. Again, Palace are fairly narrow, so the space is with Zinchenko out wide. And you see a potential situation, as with Zinchenko wide, Ayew does look to come wide to apply pressure as we previously discussed, but this could potentially open up a gap for Xhaka to move into this region and potentially receive a pass, although this doesn't occur in this situation. But as discussed, Palace were often looking to cut out Partey, so Arsenal needed different ways to be able to find him to then progress higher up the pitch. This could be through one of the false 8s momentarily dropping deep in order to draw a man and then free up Partey, which we saw Xhaka do more of, as they could at times be a double pivot. So here we see a similar situation with Eze looking to pick up Partey. So two things happen here. The forward movement of the centre-back begins to draw out Eze, but at the same time, Odegaard from this scenario can then look to drop deeper to temporarily be a second pivot alongside Partey. So now, Saliba can look to pick out Odegaard, who can then look to play a pass into Partey, who's now free, as Eze is drawn to the centre-back and one of the midfielders is drawn to Odegaard. However, Palace were very disciplined in this scenario and were able to contract around Partey quickly before he could get space, which actually led to a turnover. Alternatively, if Palace were in their narrow front three, a centre-back, often Gabriel, had the responsibility of driving higher up the pitch, and this could draw a Palace man, and with the free aids forcing Palace deeper, Partey could then find a little more room in the central area. But perhaps the most effective way was through utilising the skill set of Zinchenko, and we'll touch on that shortly. And the sheer number of options that Arsenal had was impressive. In this shape, Arsenal could push Xhaka extremely high into the front five, which would allow Martinelli to stay wide. The ball found itself to Zinchenko, he could then potentially play in Martinelli to be 1v1 against Nathaniel Klein. Alternatively, what we could see is Xhaka dropping deeper to be a second pivot alongside Partey. This would then free up Martinelli to operate in these more central channels, while Zinchenko could push higher up as a more traditional left back. One way Arsenal could then utilise this shape is by dropping Martinelli deeper to try and get on the ball, and this often drew the centre-back into a higher position, leaving space in this region, and Jesus was often quick to make runs into the vacated space, hoping to get on the end of a longer ball. However, Arsenal weren't really able to take advantage of this. So here we have Xhaka deep alongside Partey to be the second pivot, which means that Zinchenko on the flank is playing more as a traditional left back, allowing Martinelli to tuck infield. And one thing Martinelli did well throughout this match when he was in these inside positions was to drop towards the ball, which would then draw the centre-back out with him. This results in a massive gap in the centre of the defence, and it would have been interesting to see a player like Zinchenko then look to make a run into this gap. However, for the most part, Arsenal did not do this. Here's another similar situation with Xhaka being deeper alongside Partey as the pivots. Martinelli drops deep towards the ball, dragging Anderson out of position. Again, there is that gaping hole in the defense, and Jesus is looking to make the curved run in behind into that space, but Xhaka is unable to pick him out. So the role of Zinchenko was interesting. He could invert, as he often did at Manchester City, into the midfield, so that it was a double pivot of him and Partey. So if the man looked to pick him up instead, Partey would then be free to receive the ball. But the knock-on effect of Zinchenko's positioning was even more fascinating. Firstly, if Ayew was drawn in central with Zinchenko, it would free up Xhaka, who could opt to move into the left-back region, where there will be plenty of space for him to then look for a more penetrative pass. From left-back, Zinchenko has instead drifted infield, which means that Jordan Ayew from this wider position has one eye on him. Xhaka spots that the space is now in the region vacated by Zinchenko, so begins to move into the left-back area, and this allows him to receive in some momentary space. Alternatively, this could allow Martinelli to still remain wide and have Xhaka instead pushing extremely high. And Xhaka's more attacking role has been evident under Arteta, as we often see him looking to make runs into the box from these positions. Again, in this situation, Zinchenko is infield as a second pivot alongside Partey, and this allows Xhaka to push up even higher, drawing some of the central midfielders, whilst Martinelli can keep his position wide. And as a result, Partey even gets some extra space in the midfield. And because so much of Arsenal's play was coming down the left-hand side in these situations, we could often see an overload. And as we discussed, the Palace front six were looking to remain fairly compact to make play through the centre difficult. However, this would mean Odegaard's positioning in the half space could be even more effective, as Mitchell would often be drawn in central, and thus freeing up a switch towards Saka. And we did see these switches in Arsenal's second goal. So in this scenario, Palace's midfield three are still looking to remain fairly compact. However, what that means is that Odegaard has space on the outside in the right-hand half space. So now when Odegaard makes the run from the position he was in previously to here, it has drawn Mitchell infield, meaning that Gabriel can look for the switch into Saka, leading to more of a 1v1, although it doesn't come to much. These were just a few of Arteta's tactics in possession. What else did you notice? Drop it down below. To prevent the video becoming too long, in our next video we'll look at his defensive strategies. So if you want to make sure you don't miss out on that, drop a like and hit subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might enjoy the content available on my Patreon. Not only does Patreon help to support the continued production of content, as I am a one-man team, but it also gives you early access to videos that will come on the channel. You'll also get exclusive videos, get to vote on polls, and so much more. And it's cheaper than ever, no longer having a tier system, so everyone on the Patreon gets access to all the content. So head over to patreon.com/footballmadesimple to check it out. And a special thanks to my latest patrons, including Dimitros, Chrysophides, Liam White, G&D, Some Random Guy 7, Brian Liddell, and Kevin Gonzalez.
But that's all for today, and remember, keep it simple.